Alrighty, welcome back everybody to the third week of the Intro to Programming course, or the 11th week of the Python session. If you are coming here in from the early months of June, welcome back. We have been doing a lot and we will be continuing to performing a lot, learning new concepts and putting them into use especially, and continuing our projects from last week as well. In case you don't already know who I am, guys, my name is Rayna Siddiqui. I am a senior now at James B. Conant High School. I love to program. I've made multiple apps for the App Store, made a dozen different websites, and I'm now really looking towards content creation, making new articles, making videos and stuff, all that type of good stuff. If you want to learn more about me, you can definitely check me out on my website at rayonsiddiqui.com. And as a quick reminder, last week we did have some people who were asking for the Google Classroom code. So just to make sure that we are all on the same page, here is the code once again, QAF7IBJ. Be sure to join our classroom once again. It is very useful and it'll help you a lot, especially if you are in our web development course as well, because that is where I post our daily recaps every week, along with the link to our recorded sessions. And I often post the link to the code we have done that day. So in case, say, you have an error, you have a bug, you can easily pull up my fresh copy and see what the error might be, or just want to run my copy of it, which is totally fine. So if you have any questions or having any technical difficulties with joining the classroom, be sure to shoot me an email or contact the library. It shouldn't be too hard. Just need a Google account. And yeah, we can get things rolling then. So let's get down to today's agenda. We're first going to be going over the schedule for this upcoming month of September, considering that we are all starting school. In fact, myself just started school about a week and a half ago as well. So we'll get down at that, talk about our new schedule. Then we'll go on to our tradition of the daily fun fact, in which we relate our programming language, which we are studying, that being today in the Python session. And then we'll continue working on our rock, paper, scissors games and see how we can extend it, make it even better, so that more and more people can play it. So without any further ado, let's get started. So first things first, the schedule is going to be changing for our Tech Bytes courses in general for this upcoming month of September. Now, I'm in District 211 and a high school student, so my schedule is a bit different, but I, like you guys most likely, started school just recently. So it's been about a week and a half for me, but District 54 and other districts across this general area have started to open schools, and most districts are going up till 3 p.m. So considering that you guys will probably be really burnt out by the time that we start this, we decided to push back Tech Bytes an hour. So if I put the highlighter tool on, you can see that starting in September, we will still be having our Intro to Programming course every Monday. So the date is not changing. However, if you take a look at the time will be starting now at 3 p.m. So every Monday now, we will be starting from 3 till 4 p.m., still an hour-long length course. And you might notice that there are some more public holidays in September. So the first Monday of September, we will be doing Tech Bytes starting at 3 for the Intro to Programming course. And then the 7th, we have Labor Day, so that's Monday. We will not be having our courses or any library programs that day. And then we will be taking a break on the 14th, and then we will be getting back on the Intro to Programming course grind starting September 21st. So if you want to take a screenshot, or if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. But this will be our new schedule for the month of September. We would definitely like to hear you guys' feedback on if this is manageable for you, and if you're not too stressed out after school. We're trying to make it so that you guys can, as many of you guys can come on and have a great time with us on these Tech Bytes programs. And then a quick sneak peek, if you are going to be in our web development course, those will still be every Wednesday, but like the Intro to Programming courses starting in September, they as well will be starting at 3 p.m. running till 4 p.m. And then if you have been participating in Teen Trivia, that's still every Friday instead of 5, from 3 to 4 p.m. So just some time being shifted, but the days are still the same. As always, if you guys have any questions at all, any updates, whatever the case might be, feel free to make a post or just comment in the Google Classroom. All right, so let's move on to today's cool Python fun fact of the day. That fun fact being that all of these huge companies, that being Uber, Netflix, Google, Facebook, and many more, they all use the programming language which we're studying, that being Python. Now you might be thinking, hey, we've been learning this language for almost 3 months now. Truly crazy how time flies. How are these big companies using the language we're studying? And we haven't done anything like too crazy with the language. So how are these companies using these languages every day? Well, the one word answer is big data. Now, what does that exactly mean? Well, all of these huge companies, whether it be Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, even the social medias which we use every day, they all have massive amounts of data which they are analyzing. Just think about it in your personal life setting. We have multiple friends, hopefully you have multiple friends on your social media platforms, and just think about their friends, and then their friends, their family members. Think about how many people are using the social media app. Say for instance, we'll do Snapchat. Think about how many people are using Snapchat every single day. That's a lot, and that's a lot of people in general. And if you take Facebook, looking at a higher, older demographic population, that's a lot of users as well. So if you start thinking about maybe, say, your mom, maybe she has Facebook, her sister maybe has it, and then maybe your sister's friend has it, and that network keeps on expanding. That's a lot. In fact, that's probably in the hundreds of millions of users which these companies are managing. And the language which we're studying, that being Python, Python is super effective in being able to manage that data and being able to store all the massive amount of data. Because think about it. Say, for instance, we're talking about Facebook. You can make a post with your profile. You can comment on other people's posts. You can message people. You can react to their post. There's a whole bunch of features which we can't even cover in one lesson, which Facebook has. All those features, well, if you make a reaction, do anything, that data needs to be stored somewhere. And then that data needs to be read and then translated for it to appear on your app or your website or wherever or however you use the Facebook website, the platform. And Python is an amazing language in which we can essentially destruct and look at those different pieces of data. We can read files very effectively. And one of the biggest things is that these companies are always trying to do what is the most cost efficient thing. Now, what does cost efficient mean? Well, basically, they're trying to save as much money as they can while still providing the service. So still going back to that Facebook example, they're still trying to allow you to network and connect with all your relatives, your friends, XYZ, whoever the case might be. But they want to make sure that their business model, aka the money they're spending on running their platform, is kept at the lowest so that they can eventually use the money they save on other and more extravagant features. Well, using Python, they're able to do such because Python is a great language to analyze that much data. And as we progress more and more, we can dive more deeper into the nitty-gritty of why and how is that data being analyzed. But for today, keep this fun fact in mind that all these companies, most likely the app which you are using maybe after this course ends, or maybe you were using it this morning, it most likely uses Python. And this might be a number 2 fun fact of the day, but a side fact is that many of these websites, they're actually made using multiple languages. Now, at first sight, that might sound so arbitrary, so random, but something cool to also know, this might be a fun fact which we can dive deeper into next week. But it is true that many websites, many big corporations, many big companies like Facebook as well, they use a hybrid. They use Python along with other languages like you might have heard of C#, C++, Java, all these other languages. But we're not going to get that deep into that aspect today. But today's fun fact was just this, that the language which we're studying has multiple applications, which is always awesome to see, and truly crazy how we can relate what we're learning to something on such a larger scale. All right, so for today's number 3rd point on our agenda, that being that we're going to be continuing working on our project. Now, if you were not here from last week's session, that is totally all right. You can find the link to my code and what we left off on in the Google Classroom. I'll show that actually in a quick little second. But let's go over what we're going to be doing and how we are going to be extending aka making our rock, paper, scissors game a bit more polished, making it a bit nicer and all that good stuff. If you do remember from last week, we left off on the basic evaluation phase. So we were able to get the user input, throw some response back, evaluate who won the round. So say I chose rock, the computer chose paper. The computer would obviously win because paper trumps rock. But for today, we're going to be adding some more core concepts to our project, that being some cool features, such as the ability to play multiple games, maybe even add a scoring system so that we can see how many draws, how many wins, how many losses do we and the computer have respectively. We could even look into creating a tournament system if you guys would like. And then lastly, we will be adding some more interactivity, such as asking the user, what's your name? Just making the game a bit more personalized and just overall a bit more polished. So if you do want to show this off to your friends, family, it's going to be perfecto. So without any further ado, guys, let's open our website. Now you might notice the link which I have on the slide right here is a bit long and a bit different, and it has my username for the new website we use. Well, this link is towards the fresh copy I have. So this has all the code which I was typing out. So in case you were not following along last week or you just got lost, whatever the case might be, I will drop this link in the chat because it is a up-to-date copy. But feel free to use your copy of the code we were writing on the website Replit last week. But yeah, let me know if you guys have any questions in the chat. And let's open up our coding platform. Once you are in, please let me know, and then we can get started, guys. And also, if you're wondering, looking on the Google Classroom to where can I find this code and this information, well, if you head on over to Google Classroom, go on over to the classwork tab, and then if you head on over to our Week 10 Tech Bytes recap, you can find the link to our game code in the weekly recap, along with some other information which I talked about earlier. So once you're on, just give me a signal and we can begin. Alrighty, so how about we first, before we start jumping right away into our project and adding our new features, I'm just going to do a quick recap and a quick little couple minutes of overview of the code which we did type out last week, and just to make sure that there aren't any questions and that we are all on the same page, which is super important. So how about we get started? So firstly, we had this import statement. Basically, guys, don't need to ponder too much about this. It's a way for us to randomly choose an element in our array. Nothing too crazy right there, and you don't have to worry about that, especially there are some other concepts which I would much rather prefer you understand, but this is just an import statement. So our first function is initiate game. We are doing some print statements just to show the user, hey, welcome to the game. Here is where we are extracting, getting the user's input, and then this str command allows us to make sure that the rock, paper, scissors, whatever the user inputs is in a string format. Constantly, you're asking for the Google Classroom code. Yep, I did go over it earlier. I should be in the slides. There we go. So I will drop in the chat for you as well. There you go. All right. So we were able to get the user's input, and then no problem. All right. And then we were able to make sure that the input, say the user inputted in capital letters, rock, we made sure that it was in lowercase so that we could compare it later on. Then we just printed out what our choice was, and then here is where the cool part starts to come in. We have an array with the possible choices which the computer can make. Here is where we use our import random statement in which we're choosing one of the moves randomly. So there's a 33.33% chance it could be rock, it could be paper, it could be scissors. So one third chance of any of these moves being chosen. And then we're using that idea of abstraction. So we've been talking for multiple weeks now about that idea of parameters and how we can make our code nicer and more reusable. And here is how we're doing that. We have a function which we're calling called evaluate round. We're passing in the move which we made and the move which the computer made. And then we're just using our logic statements, aka the if-else statements, to keep track of what's happening. So we haven't implemented any score tracking system right now, but we just have some print statements. So say the user seed represents our user's choice. So say I chose rock, the computer chose paper. The computer would win that round because paper does in fact beat rock. So if there aren't any questions about last week's code, any understanding, anything you guys might have, we can get started with today's extension. All right, so looks like everybody is good. Hopefully you have found the link and are on the Replit website. And as always, hopefully you made an account so that you can save your progress and ask any questions if that ever happens. But yeah, let's get started. So one of the main things which I want to go over today is that I want to make our game a bit more fun in the sense that if we run it right now, and we'll see how, if you haven't seen rock, paper, scissors before, here is how it goes. We can choose rock, paper, or scissors. Say I go with rock. Our choice was rock, the computer's choice was rock, so nobody won the round. But now you might notice that if I type in anything right here, I get an error. Well, that's because we're not asking the user for their input. And the reason we're not asking for the user's input after the round has finished is because this game is only running one time. So if I hit run again, this game essentially is only working once. So how about we make it in a sense that we can play this game multiple times so that in that case, we can even add our very own scoring system. So we have multiple routes which we can take. We have learned about loops, which is a way for us to keep on continuously running pieces of code. And remember, in Python, there is a while loop and there is a for loop. So in this case, we can use either or. I think that for the purposes of just going over, reviewing, how about we start off with a while loop? So I'm just going to use some commenting, adding, whenever you guys see me add this hashtag, it's basically me just plotting the idea which we're talking about. So right here, we just have some cases. And right here, I'll talk about what I'm going to do below. So we're probably going to use a while loop. And then this will allow us to continuously run our game. There we go. So let's start off by first we need to decide how many times do we want this game to go till. So how about we'll do 5 rounds. We'll have the computer and us play 5 rounds of rock, paper, scissors, and then we can report some statistics. So we first have to declare a variable, remember, which is going to be the condition which our while loop is going to make sure is always met. So how about we make a variable called times game ran. You could call it whatever you'd like. We'll set that equal to 0. And now we gotta type out our while loop. So we're going to do while, remember the syntax is while, space, open and close parentheses, and the name of whatever your variable was, like such. And then we want to keep on running this while loop for 5 times, right? So then whenever our variable is less than the value of 5, we will run our code. Now, even if I do indent this piece of code, this function which we're calling to evaluate the round's outcome, nothing will significantly be impacted because this while loop is in the wrong position in our code. Because we want to make sure that we ask the user for their input 5 times. Well, right now, that's not what is happening, so we have to copy this piece of code. You can delete it from our initiate game function. And then what I'm going to do now is create a separate function just to make things a bit more organized. So I'm going to make a new function called def start run game, whatever you like to call it, opening close parentheses, colon, indentation, and then I'm going to paste my while loop. Once I've done that, now I'm going to call my initiate game function, because just to make it in a logical sense, we want to call our function 5 times, because this initiate game function is where we are asking the user for their input and doing the evaluation. Hopefully you can understand that the reason why we did not put our while loop around this, we did not put this function inside of our while loop, is because we don't want to evaluate the same response 5 times. We want to make sure that the game runs 5 times so that 5 rounds can essentially occur. Now, there's one thing which we have to do before we can actually run our game. That being that we have to call the start run game function at the very bottom. Right now, we're calling initiate game. So go ahead and replace that with whatever you called your function, like so. Give everybody a quick minute. If you have any questions, as always, feel free to drop them in the chat. All right, so now if we hit the run button, we should see us able to play 5 rounds of rock, paper, scissors. Here we go. So I hit run, make a choice of rock, paper, scissors. I'll do paper for the first round. There we go. We won that round because the computer chose rock. Paper beats rock. There we go. And now here's the part which we just coded. This game is able to run multiple times. So now we are able to see that we are prompted from the computer a choice of whether to choose rock, paper, scissors once again. So now we can play again. So I'll do rock this time. The computer chose scissors. We won. We can play again for the 3rd time. We can play again for the 4th time. And then once and lastly, we can play again for the 5th time. Oh, and one thing. It looks like that we have been asked by the computer to make another choice. But then we decided that we wanted our game to run 5 times. Didn't we just tell the computer that we wanted our game to run 5 times? Right here, we have it saying that we want our while loop to keep on continuing and run whatever piece of code is inside until our variable is less than 5. Well, why is it asking us to enter a move when our game has ran more than 5 times? Well, that's because the very important thing in a while loop, we are not incrementing or modifying or changing our variable. So what we got to do is that every time we ask the computer, every time we have a round occur, we got to make sure that we add 1 to our variable. This way, our variable times game ran is being updated, and it will ensure that our rounds, there are 5 rounds in our rock, paper, scissors game. So with that modification, how about we stop our code and rerun it, and we should see 5 rounds. So round number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, and this should be the last. We should not see any more prompts being asked to us. Number 5, there we go. And as we can see by this little cursor character, that means that our code has terminated, and we have successfully made our game reusable in the sense that we can play multiple rounds. All right, so now we have the idea of our game able to run multiple times. How about we add the second piece and a super important part today, that being the scorekeeping system. So now, as you can see, there's a lot of text right here, and that's making my eyes a bit tired. So how about we make it in a sense that we have some stats being displayed? So I'm just gonna write down some stats being displayed. So we can have the first stat being the number of ties we have. The next stat we can have is the number of wins we have. And finally, the last stat which we can have is the number of losses we have. Hopefully that is kept to a minimum. So we firstly have to keep track of those variables, right? Now we have the question which we have run into now, to use a local or a global variable. So in our past projects, we have often used local variables like this variable right here, times game ran, that is a local variable because it's only able to be used inside of start run game, and we're not passing it through a parameter into any separate function. But for today, how about we get some practice in with using a global variable, meaning a variable which can be accessed everywhere in our program. So it can be accessed in any one of these functions. So let's have a quick refresher on how to type those. We'll just go outside of any of our functions, and you could declare this variable wherever you'd like. And then we're going to do global, and then whatever the name of our variable is. So global space, and then I'm going to call ties equals 0, and then another variable called wins equals 0, and then global losses equals 0. This is me just setting our variables with the initial condition of 0. Oh, 1 second. All right, so hopefully you have those variables typed out, and looks like we are getting an error. I believe I was talking about a separate concept, guys. Sorry about that. Go ahead and delete that global word before our variables, like such, and just declare them as ties, wins, and losses. You could call them whatever you'd like. So user ties, user wins, user losses, whatever you'd like. We just want to have these variables so that we can keep track and have a scoring system. So now, remember, since I have declared these variables outside of our functions, these variables can be used anywhere. So if I just go right here, I start typing ties, this nice online platform autofills for me. So I can use my variable inside of the start run game function. However, that's not where we're going to use it. We got to go back down to our evaluate round function. And here is where we will manipulate our variables. So we have to add probably 1. We can use the increment of 1 whenever a certain event occurs. Now that event can be a tie, it could be us winning, it could be us losing. So let's go to our first if statement, that being if us and the computer, we had a draw. Well, that means that we have to increase the value of our ties variable by 1, like such. All right, so once we have that, it looks like we are running into one more error, guys. Looks like our variable is being referred before our assignment. All right, so how about just to make this process go a bit faster, we can copy our variables, ties, wins, and losses, and we can put them in our evaluate round function, like such. I'm not sure why we are getting that error. I will be sure to take a look at that, why we are getting an error on this platform with a global variable. That is a bit weird, but just to keep things moving, we can use our variables, ties, wins, and losses inside of our evaluate round function. So all I did was just move them into this function, and since we are just using them inside of this function, it is totally fine for us to use them as a local variable. But next week, I can definitely cover us using them in a global variable sense. All right, so now if we see, we can manipulate our variables. So we are increasing our ties count by 1 whenever we have a tie. And then I'm just going to fill the same concept, but just different variable. So the computer has won this round, meaning that we have lost. So I'm going to increase our loss count by 1. And then if we have won the round, that means I'm just going to increase our win count by 1. Now you might notice this little shortcut I used. This means the same thing as increasing the value of our wins variable by 1. It's just a nice and short shortcut. So if you just do plus equals, and then whatever the incrementing value is. So simply, all we gotta do now is continue that pattern. So whenever whenever we win the round, we just add 1 to our wins variable, and then whenever we lose, we add 1 to our losses variable. Just finish that off for all of these statements. Like such. And now we can actually display our stats. So we can show off how many ties, how many wins, and how many losses we have. So how about we go ahead and do that? So now since these are all local variables, we will be using them inside of our evaluate round function. I'm just going to go outside of the scope of our logic statements, aka our if-else statements. I'm just going to go outside, be sure that your indentations are correct. And now we can just print some stuff out. So I'm just going to do a print statement. Firstly, I'm just going to add some dashes across the board for some nice formatting. And then we can start printing out our stats. So I'm going to do, we'll do ties, and then colon, add a space. Remember, this is not JavaScript, so we do not use the plus operator to combine and concatenate our strings. We're just going to use a comma, so that this way our variable will be showed after the word ties, and then we can continue that same format. I'm going to print our wins, and then lastly, I'm going to print the losses. And then just for some nice formatting, just going to print out one more line of these dashes. All right, so without any further ado, how about we run this and see our scoring system in play? Hit run. Let's play our first round. Rock, paper, scissors. Let's go with rock. And looks like it was a tie. And we can correctly see our ties variable changing in a way that it is increasing by 1 because we did in fact have a tie. Since we, the computer, chose rock, that is a tie. And then our variable is incremented, aka increased by a value of 1. And then we can see it being nicely printed out right here for us to see. And let's play this a couple more times. Hopefully we can get some wins and losses. We'll do paper. And then looks like we lost that round. Now here is this one thing coming into play, that being our variables resetting their values. Because every time we are calling our function evaluate round, they are being reset to the value of 0. Now here is where that idea of using the global variable comes into play. So if I, for instance, take this out of this function, and I'm still getting that error. Okay, so the basic idea, which I will be sure to look why this is happening, but since we are calling our function evaluate round every time we have inputted an answer, so like say whenever I put in paper, rock, scissors, whatever the case might be, that function is being called every time. Now, every time that function is being called, we are resetting the value of our variables to 0. So, which is why it is not keeping track of how many wins, losses, and ties we have. So if I put paper, we got a loss. But if I put rock, we should see it's being reset to 0, like such. So give me 1 second. Let me see if I can figure out why we are having that error on this platform. So if we do take out our 3 variables, we put them, let's put them right here. Like such. Here we go. All right, rock. Okay, yeah, so we are still getting that error, which is a bit weird. We'll definitely be sure to take a look at why that's happening. But for this week, we do have that essential and that core concept down in the sense that we are keeping track of the number of wins and losses and ties we have using some manipulation of our variables. All right. And one last thing which I would like to add to our game is some interactivity with the user and some personalization. So how about we ask the user for their name and then we can greet them as well, just to finish our game off before the time runs out. So we are asking the user for their choice of name. Now we have to think about something right here logically. Do we want to place our the statement where we ask the user for their name inside of our while loop? Well, what would be the consequence of that? Well, we're going to be asking the user for their name 5 separate times, which can get a bit annoying. So we obviously just want to ask the user for their name once, and then we can use that throughout our program. So what we'll do is just go below our times enrand func, or we can go above actually. And then just create a variable to hold the user's name. So I'm going to call it username. Set it equal to an input. I'm just going to convert that to a string right away. And then just ask, hey, what's your name? And then we can just print out after we have grabbed the user's name. We can just say hi, and then the user's name, and then one more quotation mark with the comma separating the variable. And then we can just say welcome to rock, paper, scissors. And if you want to see that work, we can hit run. It asks us for our name, so I'll put my name. And it tells me, hey, Rayon, welcome to rock, paper, scissors, adding some personalization to our game. So that is it for our concepts in our rock, paper, scissors game today. I will be sure to update in the Google Classroom to what was happening. I'm sure I was making some minor logical error on my part or something. This platform shouldn't be too much of a hassle. I will post the updated version so that our scoring system is perfectly intact, and we'll share it with you guys next week as well. All right, so with that in mind, our goal for next week will be to learn about a new concept, that being classes in the programming language of Python. We'll be expanding on our knowledge of all the concepts we have learned and then eventually getting back to creating some more projects. Hopefully you had a good time with this 2-week project of making the rock, paper, scissors game. As I said before, I will post the finished copy of the game with the global variables of the wins, ties, and losses on our Google Classroom. So be sure to keep an eye out there in the next couple of minutes after our course ends. But hopefully you guys had a good time. Hopefully you enjoyed the fun fact of the day and learned something interesting. As always, take care, guys. And if you're going to be in the web development course, I'll see you guys there. But if not, I'll catch you guys on the next one, next week. See you guys.